I had been associated with Ollie for 7 years now. And the first class I attended as a guest was to see Dr. Kicklighter at the museum. And at that point, I made the decision to become a member of Ollie. So you can thank Dr. Kicklighter for the fact that you have to put up with me on a weekly basis. So, but at that point, I decided to become a member, and then shortly thereafter, I became his class coordinator, of which there are no other class coordinators but me. Well, I guess I just can't figure out when to leave. But I closed a lot of bars in my day, just so you know. But I just want to take this time to say how much that for the 7 years that I've been here, Dr. Kicklighter has taught every single semester. And I can't think of anybody else that does history that has taught as much as he has. So I would like to take this time just to say thank you to Dr. Kicklighter for his contributions to Ollie and of course to Auburn University. And with that, I want you all to give him a big hand and welcome him to the podium. Thank you.
Yes. And without Frank, this would not be possible. So he
Well, it wouldn't be as pretty.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. The lure of good looks is something about it.
The PowerPoint.
Okay. I thought you meant the Adonis effect of just your be there and fool them. But yes, thanks to everyone for being here and enjoy this so much. And Sherry, I still don't have tenure. And I know. So they're hiring me on a year-by-year basis, and I'm still hoping for a hefty raise, but that hadn't come. Yeah.
Dr. Ken Autry today, he said that you can teach whoever you want, but there's no money.
Oh, bummer. Okay, I'll try to hang on. Maybe I'll get enough bribes. Yeah, the lure of apples. Taken from, I got one today. This was free too. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm open for it, but I'm just saying that I'll take whatever I can get.
Probably stolen.
The loop, well, but I didn't know that.
That's
right. So, too many of these crime series, that's really corrupted me. We are continuing on with Hungary today, which I find absolutely fascinating. And one reason I find it so fascinating is because they seem to be, in the present day, torn between extreme left and extreme right. And they are also, or were, a member of the Axis. And yet they becoming communists right after World War II never had to engage in what Germans have done. I don't know if you ever thought about this, but think about certainly even the Vichy French. Everybody's gone through this terrible period of self-examination and all that, but especially in Germany. Italians, Japanese, I'm not so sure. And Germans, big time. You know, if you win, Holocaust denial is against the law, as I understand it. That it then is to say that it's interesting to wonder how much the Hungary of today fully deals with these issues of World War II. Oh, I'm sure they did during the communist period. But we're definitely in a different time. And I'll talk more about that today because I think in many ways we're getting into an area of past and present meet. And that will be an issue that Hungarians of today are possibly dealing with. Maybe not in a way that will be satisfactory to both sides, but so we will see. And I want you just to bear that in mind as we continue and talk about Admiral Hody. Again, I became interested in him because, frankly, the idea of a famous admiral in the Austro-Hungarian Navy then becomes the strongman of a country that's landlocked. It seems somewhat bizarre if you don't know much about the situation. But the situation is that Hungary was a new country, wasn't it? That is another little interesting fact if you stop and remember that issue. That we go back into Austro-Hungarian history. And I don't want to have a review yet because you need to study for your finals, and I know you'll do that. But the idea being, you already remember the Ausgleich. I'm sure that most of you are ready. If I give fill in the blanks, you'll know these terms and you won't lose points because of that, or you repeat. And tuition is high. Maybe not in 1976, quite the same price it is now, right? But we do know seriously that the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was so named as of 1867, will be effectively ended in 1918. And that Treaty of Trianon in 1920 was devastating for Hungary in terms of land loss and all the rest. All of this is to say that Hungary was a quote unquote revisionist power. And that's a nice way of saying they wanted it back. And they wanted it back from something called Czechoslovakia. Yeah.
Amongst others.
Yeah, amongst others. But since Czechoslovakia is something we think about a lot, I want to make sure you're aware of that. There's no choice that Hungarians and Czechs are going to get close. Okay, you got a friend? No James Taylor here. There's going to be the very great unpopularity.
Right down there with the Slovaks.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, why did Hungarians join the Axis? Well, as I think we're going to see, they're all revisionist powers if you look at the nations that were in that group. Japan was certainly one. And the Italians were definitely one. And definitely the Germans, who were the leaders. So all of this is to say Hungary was going to be in that group of people. How much does that mean that they were in sympathy? Well, let me start out by saying Admiral Hody was not a Nazi. I think I told you last week he's another authoritarian. And I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, but there are a lot of them. They check off all the boxes. They like law and order. They support the church, family, traditional virtues, we would say. So, and you say revolution, you want a revolution? Well, we don't want your kind around. You fermez la bouche, shut your mouth, because you are trouble. So, I did show you that brief, I think it was kind of brief, that brief tape of 1938 when he went to Germany, the admiral, and Mrs. Hody went sort of like a goodwill visit for the christening. Yeah, of this great ship, very great ship. And it was not like old buddies, it was, simply pro forma. But it's significant because they were not friends, they were not close, it was just one of those things. And of course, the Hungarians going to Germany, not in reverse. Not only did the Fuhrer not go to other places, remember Chamberlain had to go to Germany. Hitler didn't go to England, did he? The idea is it was his country. Now, once the war started or was about to start, Hitler assumed that Hungary was automatically going to come in. The war started, we have an alliance, but apparently Admiral Horthy resisted because he had no grievance against the Poles. And he said, why are we going to war? Why is our group? I'm sure he said it politely, but it was to the effect of we have no cause for war. The Poles haven't done anything to us. So we'll just sit this one out, but thanks. However, it appears that with pressure, some Hungarians would join this mass of humanity. I think it to be called possibly 1 million troops or maybe more. They would say the force that invaded the Soviet Union was pretty large, but even the sort that came about earlier in 1939 would have been great. All of that then is to say that Hungarians are reluctant partners in World War II. However, I'm sure that the Germans offered what they would say in The Godfather was an offer you can't refuse. I'm not sure that they said, we want you to do what you think is right for your people. It won't affect our relationship. We're crazy about you. I don't think there was any of that, right? I think this is a very, very difficult thing. So they're Hungarians that are going into the Soviet Union in 1941. But this has been a very difficult thing. Hungary and Romania, and you're thinking, wow, I bet they were close. They were very close, but not pleasantly so. I often speak of that in terms of relationships between apartment dwellers. You can be a neighbor and not be a friend. I mean, you want to be friends. You probably bake a pie and go and take it and say, howdy, neighbor. I want to be your friend. I'm glad we can live. I enjoy your music that I get to hear when I try to sleep. It's all of the various issues that one deals with. But let's just say that the Romanians, and you see that over there, got a big hunk of Hungary, if you'll forgive the alliteration. Would you call that tan, maybe? But of course, let's call it for what it is. Transylvania, yes. And all of this is to say that the Hungarians don't like it. But as of 1920, I wouldn't try to do anything about it. But you put it away, someday it's going to happen. We're going to get it back. But you see in effect that oddly, the governments of Romania and Hungary were on the side of the Axis. But it's like, I don't really like you, but we're on the same side. And why are they on the same side? Well, I think it's because they neither like the Soviet Union. I think it's like when you're between the Nazis and the communists, you have to think which is worse, which one. So it's interesting to think that Romania changed sides during the war. I mean, it's like, how do you change sides? Well, I guess you look at who's winning and who's losing. Yeah, it's like, does that work in horses and sports? I'm not so sure, but it seemed to work for the Romanians because of the oil issues and a variety of Romanian issues that are interesting, but not our concern. But rather than that, I'm sure that Hungarians who had recovered Transylvania and so forth now find themselves, oddly enough, as enemies of Hungary. And you think, why are they enemies? Well, I guess it's because those Hungarians haven't gotten on the right side, and we Romanians are on the right side, meaning we're on the Allies side. Personally, I wouldn't think the Allies would think, gosh, we're so glad to have you. You know, it's like, I wouldn't think this is a question of love and so forth. I think it's a matter of who is going to prevail. And I think about the summer of 1944, I'm thinking this may take longer, but I think Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill were pretty certain of their victory in Europe. Because what would they say? The Soviets are coming? They are really coming, as we know. They are going west. And when they're going seriously. And of course, Hungarians are going to be hurt. Now, notice the map, because after the war, Hungary will go back to its kind of post-World War I triennial size. And as far as I'm aware, it's about the size it is now. So let's hope they will stay there, because we want peace between Romania and Hungary. And so they've lost, and see the area that, well, it became Yugoslavia. And I always thought that area, see down south, Novi Bazar, I always thought that was interesting. Those areas, and believe it or not, they had serious conflicts. And I guess that's the way folks are, you know. It's ours and that's ours, but maybe the Cold War kind of covered those conflicts, because I'm sure it would be inappropriate for Warsaw Pact members to have these kind of fights, because they were supposed to have this kind of fraternal love and say, yeah, we care about you. Go Marx, go Lenin, go you know, that sort of thing. Now, this fellow, this is definitely the villain of the piece. His name is Salazi. I didn't even put it up there because maybe I didn't want to. He is the terrible one, because he will be the ultimate in evil. Most of you will remember we talked earlier about the Arrow Cross Party, and that was the Hungarian Nazi party, Hungarian fascist party. These people were the gangsters, bad guys. They were definitely outlawed early on in the long period of Admiral Horthy. Remember, he was the leader from 1920 to 1944. So he had more or less outlawed them for, gosh, 15 years, until the pressure from the Germans was too great. And this was a relatively young man, but he now, as leader of the Hungarian Nazis, was a major figure, and of course kowtowed up to the Germans because Admiral Horthy had no use for him. So he would just sort of like going around Horthy and the major figures of the government, because by 1944, it's fair to say the Germans weren't pleased with the admiral, because the admiral was, shall we say, cooling down, if he was ever hot for the Axis. And that has to do, I think, with, of course, the realization that we're losing. And you think, gosh, do you mean? Yes, I do. The Soviets are coming. And they're coming to a country near you, meaning Hungary. Yeah.
Knocking on the door.
Yeah. Oh, seriously? Knock. I mean, they are already in Eastern Hungary, as far as I'm aware. And we understand that with this particular issue, how do we say this? Admiral Horthy's days are numbered as the leader of Hungary. What they do, which I find rather interesting, is the Germans, who basically have a sizable force in Budapest now and in Hungary, are going to kidnap Admiral Horthy's son. I mean, his children were adults, so it's not like a baby or something. He was a grown man, and he was like, Admiral Luke Jr. I mean, he's like daddy, big daddy's boy, that kind of thing. And boy, they sure did. Germans carried him away and said, sounds like something out of The Sopranos, doesn't it? Said, you want him back, you do what we say. And you say, well, that's not very nice. After we had the lovely ship tour in 1938, is this the way you talk to me? Yeah, this is the way we do it. This is the way if you're the Germans. Because the Germans wanted the admiral out. We've got your boy. If you want to ever see your boy alive again, Miklos Jr., then you'll step down. In other words, they were trying to get rid of him. And I guess he was lucky he and his son were alive. But what they do is they take him out once he steps down, and they take him to Germany, and he is incarcerated, I guess you'd say, enclosed in a Bavarian area. I mean, Bavaria, you say, oh, it's so beautiful down there. Many of you been to Munich and that area around Munich, and it's so beautiful. But I don't think it's such a good idea at this time. Let's think 1944, shall we? So, but he's there, and I guess he's getting his bread and water, maybe an apple or two, who knows? Yeah, probably not. No fruit, no salad, yeah. But the idea is he's out of the whole thing now. He's with his son, Miklos Jr. So that's nice. But this guy now takes over the Hungarian. You say, is he a Nazi sycophant? Oh, you bet. Of course he is. These are just Nazi likes, I guess you'd say. Not Nazi likes either. They are just as wicked. They're called the Arrow Cross Party. And this will, in fact, lead to the worst part of World War II for Hungary because of the elimination of most Hungarian Jews. This is their chapter of the Holocaust. How much of this was going on during Horthy's time? Of course, people will debate even to this day. Isn't that wild? But it's true that this is when it gets massive during the time of this last year of the war. And I have to look at this name, Selassie. I have to look at it and remember because he went after the Hungarian Jews with quite the vengeance. And I think he had assistance from the Germans, a lot of assistance, because this is what they wanted. I mean, it's not like this was some afterthought or anything. He was very much in it. So all of this went on until finally early 1945, when for all intents and purposes, World War II was over in Hungary because the Soviets had it. And if you were someone like Selassie, you can count the days, because once they get a hold of you, you can pretty well be assured that you won't be breathing much longer. I'm not going to show you any execution shots, but I will make you aware of the fact that the Soviets, along with Hungarian communists, now took over Hungary. And of course, that goes back to what I was saying last time about 1956. And when many of us were watching on television as the Hungarians were revolting against the communists, and you think how that went on. Some will remember the fall of 1956. And perhaps if they weren't having a good time, they may have been very conscious of Cold War history even then. Yeah. And so you're all too well aware of that. So, like I told you, it won't take them long. 45 to 46, they're goners. All who were associated with this, convicted, executed in prison. I mean, however that's done, now many people don't approve of capital punishment anymore, but I think at the time, people of that ilk, I don't think there was any tremendous movement to save them. They were gone. And remember, the Hungarian government was by this point communist and Soviet controlled. So of course, this is government sponsored. So we understand that. I mean, it's not like there's an issue. And by the way, a familiar name came up, a name that many of us heard in high school. Eichmann. Gosh, I will never forget that as long as I live. Adolf Eichmann for you youngsters. It was an individual. I mean, you just think about what did Hannah Arendt say, the banality of evil? Yeah. If that's true or not, Eichmann was one of the major figures with this creature. Yeah, I mean, he was like, what would you say, German coordinator? It's all pretty awful. And I'm not trying to make it, I don't want to belabor the point, but all of this is associated with it. And during that period, late 44 into 45, and you think, why are they doing it now? Well, that's how strong the hatred of Jews was. I feel. Because I can't imagine why they would do it. Surely they don't think that's going to help them. And it's certainly not going to affect their relationship with the Russians. Because, you know, the Soviets are not exactly friends of Jewish people. But the Soviets loathe Germans. You say, but they seem so warm in August of 39. Whatever happened to the love we shared? I think it's gone, don't you? Yeah, I think it's seriously gone. God, can you imagine living in Ukraine in 1940? You think that would have done a lot for your love of Germany? No, I don't think so. So anyway, he and all of his associates would be eliminated. And meanwhile, the admiral, he is outside the estate, shall we call it, the manor house, the castle, the great mansion in Bavaria. I suppose this is outside Munich. And it was probably, I don't think it was exactly a royal home. I mean, it could have been, but it was very ample. And the admiral had been there for, well, almost a year. Now, the big question for me is, who is the two-star general? I know. I could give you free apples if you know that answer. I thought so. You don't know. Yes. So you have a good guess?
James is an engineer.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you got engineer on the collar.
Okay. All right. I want a name. You're not getting any special credit for that. But good try. Good try. Yeah. I could not find it, people. I tried. I failed you. I hope this won't affect my evaluation. Okay. Yeah. I'm still trying to keep my job.
Probably a division.
You hit me. Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, that's because he's a major.
But I think I looked at him and I'm thinking, I wonder what kind of conversation they had. Yeah, I've got a lot of free time. Maybe I should have it in a different activity. But I kept thinking, I wonder if he said, "Hi, Admiral, I hope you've been doing well." And they're keeping you well. I'm not so sure. But more or less, I imagine if I were Admiral Horty, I'd be glad to be out. I don't think that we would think of this as being like being in Folsom or some type of terrible. I don't think it was quite like that. I think that he was in a Bavarian estate manor. So I think it was rather comfortable. They probably had people there and he and his son. But the relief of being liberated by the Americans, and by the way, Americans are not the same as Soviets. So when we get liberated, regardless of whether it's engineer or somebody, and presumably got a good pension because of who you are. So that would be in 1945, and that certainly is not going to be the end of the story. But I would say reasonably, if you look at him, he doesn't look bad. I I guess it's aging pretty well. And this is the end of the war. Because, of course, by then, the Americans and their allies have liberated Germany. And so that would be in the spring of 45, as you can figure. He's remained, Admiral Hardy, in the area. I'm assuming it would have been in the suburbs of Munich, maybe. Because from 46 to maybe 49, he would be called as a witness in various trials in Germany. That's a lot of trials. And I thought this particular picture, and again, I don't think he looks bad at all. And you notice he's well dressed, and you say, well, does that mean, yeah, what I think it means? Yes, it does. It means that he is not a prisoner. I'm not sure that he was free to not testify, but he was required to testify. And so there is that sort of semi-confinement until all the war trials finally come to an end. And that will not be until the 1949. And I guess maybe there were minor ones even past that. I'm assuming this is a translator beside him, although he did speak English and other languages fluently. It's one of those great gifts some have, but he would testify. And the idea is, of course, I guess if he had been a serious war criminal, they wouldn't have invited him to testify. I think more or less, and you have to think, I guess, now like a prosecuting attorney. Why would they call him? Because he had the goods on the various Nazis or surviving Hungarians who had been involved in that last part. So I'm assuming, as they always say in the crime show, sung like a canary. And it's like went on and on and on. And I just can't imagine how all that would be, I guess, like in the stories. Yeah. It's like, it's probably not fun after a while. But he went, and the Hordys were with him, his wife and his children. Oddly enough, when he finally died, all of his children, except for one, would be dead. But he went on to live a very long life. He moved to Portugal in 1949. You know, it's like one of those things. He was living there in Germany, and the Germans were, remember, this is West Germany by now. And I think it was probably a little note from Lisbon and say, dear Admiral, we understand that maybe it's time to move, and I guess you can't get back to Budapest, and we know you miss it. Hungary is a beautiful country, but Lisbon's mighty nice this time of year. Maybe you would like to come and stay with me. Sincerely, Antonio Salazar. Yes, I didn't see the letter. I'm just suggesting that it might have been that way. And it may have been the kind of letter you want to get. Somebody still loves me. I mean, yeah, because he didn't have a lot of friends in Germany. And you say, what about Hungary? Even fewer. If there's anything fewer than none, that would be it. I don't think there's like, sort of the Hardy fan club there. And If you were in the Horty fan club, I'd be in the closet, definitely. Yeah. And yeah, 1949. So pack the van, kids. We're going to Portugal. And for those of you been there, Delta's ready when you are. It's a beautiful place. And back in that era, and even, gosh, I think when I went, I think it was 1967. It was called the sort of the world of the ex-kings. There were so many. I guess they all were getting pensions. It's kind of like, remember the old stories about Social Security? Everybody, St. Petersburg or somewhere like that, everybody's waiting for the checks. And so it's kind of like that. All of these were retired kings, deposed dictators and kings and all the rest. And in this case, he didn't feel uncomfortable. The Horty family, they all arrived and settled down in this small community called Estoril. And there they lived. And lived for quite a few years until 1957. His son, the one I was telling you about, who was captured, Junior, he lived until 1993, I believe. So, yeah. So, 1907 to 1993, I just looking at you now, I just thought about that. I thought that was not a bad deal, considering the Nazis almost killed him off. In any event, he died, and this will sound terribly romantic after all I've said, but he died of a broken heart because you'll notice when he died, early 1957. And if you've been paying attention, I know you have. Yes. Okay. You want that extra credit, you better be. Because the fall of 1956, and they say that contributed to the pain of his last time on earth, because he was just brokenhearted to see what happened to the Hungarians and the defeat of the Hungarian revolt. If that may sound like romantic dribble, so be it. But he had a rather lengthy life. On the other hand, you can understand that his feelings about Hungary were very strong, and his antipathy about the Russians was very, very strong. So his family continued to live there because they had no other choice, because they couldn't go back home. They did not go home until he did, or his remains. And think about that, 1993. And of course, being someone who knows a lot of dates and is ready to be tested on it big time. 1991 will give you the quivers. End of the Cold War. I know, you knew. And you say, well, what's this? Well, that, of course, is the Horty tomb. Did you see it in Budapest?
We didn't stop by the tomb.
Okay. It is there, and that's why I had the picture and you the gates and so forth. The idea being that he had it in his last will. I want my body in Portugal until every single Russian is out of this country. Now, you know, how can you say that in 1956? I don't know. When he wrote his will, I'm assuming it was then. But they waited. And sure enough, at the end of the Cold War, the last of the Russians pulled out. So they're digging up poor Hoody, taking him home. Isn't that wild? Yeah, but that's exactly right. I mean, I guess they had some extra money. Yeah. But I'm thinking, I guess it's expensive to be all of that. And then you get these nice digs. Yeah. I mean, so this isn't bad. This is a lot better than regular folks, right? Yeah. I'm thinking. So that would have been 1993, first class accommodations, I would say, because I just think that's really beautiful. So your next trip to Hungary, don't miss it.
It's not quite up to Napoleon's, but.
Well, I'm just saying, for Hungary, it's not bad. I'm saying, I'm sure there are nicer, but now it's time to recapitulate and think about what all this means, because is Horty now the hero? Well, apparently some say yes, and then others say no. Because very much like many countries today, including this one, Hungarians are torn between right and left. And so you have people who will throw stuff. Yes, that's right. Oh, you have people who say, whenever they say, read something nice about, there's some kind of Horty Memorial Committee or Horty Appreciation. I mean, it's amazing. And then these folks will come up and say, and so then they go back and forth at each other. Yeah, but I mean, we're aware of countries like this, where this goes on. And it's definitely strong in Hungary, because once you have the group, the Horty Appreciation Committee, then you're going to have the Horty Damnation Committee. So yeah, it goes back and forth, because they will blame him for anti-Semitism or connect him with that. Yeah, because they say he was responsible for associating with Hitler, and if it had been for him, then all the Jews wouldn't have died later. Basically, then you have a parting of the ways in the opinions of the two groups, and there's not a lot of middle here. When I started reading about this, I was absolutely amazed that there was that divergence of opinion about him and this whole period in Hungarian history. And that's why I said history is sort of like a dialogue between the present and the past, isn't it? I mean, I don't assume they're gonna close this down, or I'm sure there's some sort of Horty fund that covers, as you know, it upkeep. Can you imagine? Yeah. I mean, if you have to pay all that, the rake-in and all the other stuff, I mean, it's going to cost you. And I'm sure the Hungarian government has to bear part of the cost. And I'm sure some people say, just put him in a pauper's grave or something. He's a loser. We hate him. You say, they don't say that about the admiral. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's like this media, they can get it. If you were a communist, if you were a communist in Hungary today, you would say, ratemydictator.com? How would he do on a scale of 5?
He'd be better than Hitler.
Okay, we like him better than Hitler. Wow. What about Il Duce?
That's a question.
Okay.
I made a little better.
Okay, a little bit. We keep on going up. I'm trying here, but it's not going to be good. No. So you lose your tune. Okay. Oh, yeah. You got to be buried with regular people. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, but that's true. I mean, I'm being silly, but it really is a very, very strange business when we think about the divisions in the thinking here. And that makes us think, I hope, a little bit about the deep divisions that can occur between people, because you would think, well, he did some good things and he worked hard to lessen the effects of the depression in Hungary. You know, it's like you're trying to be a kind person, but he made some mistakes during World War II. But no, it's just hardcore one way or the other. He was great, joined the Hoodie Memorial Association, or evil, throw things. So that seems to be the way it is. And I suppose during the future, as we can see it now, because currently there is a Hungarian leader who is right wing, and he is responsible for a lot of the current pro-Houthi activity. And I think, can people ever let this go? And I'm thinking probably not. I think this will go on among the Hungarian Jewish community and other groups that look upon this period in Hungarian history with very jaundiced eyes. And with that, I'll end, and I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being with me this time. See you in the fall, I hope.
I think the maintenance is really good right now.
I'm sorry?
The maintenance of the tomb is probably really good right now.
It's very good. Yes,
That government in there?
that
I'm sure it
was-
good.
but yeah, that was what I was getting.